Hello, Connor. How are you doing today?
Sam, thanks for having me.
So, Connor, we're going to get into everything about systems and lack of data and staff shortages and so on. Before we do that, for those that aren't aware, I'm sure they're few and far between, but just introduce yourself, please, and Maitre.
We're Conor Shaw, one of the co-founders of Maitre. Maitre is a hotel operations software. Started in the United States originally as a pure housekeeping solution, and now we can cover the whole of an operations background or whole of operations system. And myself, up until 2 years ago, when I came on board with Maitre, I ran and managed five-star hotels in Ireland, Marriott and the Manor for over a decade. So lived the pain that hoteliers experience, especially with disconnected and systems aren't fit for use as well.
Sure. Thank you. It's interesting. There seems to be a plethora of individuals like yourself that have been on one side of the fence, become frustrated with certain things in their day to day, and then obviously flipped to what you're doing now, launching some software to solve a pain point. So it's interesting. We're going to get into it. The first topic that we're going to discuss is that potentially, and you'll confirm or deny otherwise, there might be too many systems that don't necessarily speak to one another. And I'm interested. Obviously, you're talking to hoteliers regularly, if not on a daily basis, across the market, and you might say there's a distinction between EMEA and elsewhere. But super operators suggest that talking about systems overload. Do you agree with that? And what does it typically look like in a property?
Yeah, I think systems overload. I think systems are really important in hotels. They don't necessarily have to be technology systems. Like there's particular processes in hotels that run separate to technology. And in terms of, I suppose, system overload, I probably wouldn't call it exactly that. What I would say is there's an abundance of legacy technology in hotels, and a lot of it's not fit for purpose anymore. A lot of them are siloed; don't communicate with each other, and as a result, you get a lot of hoteliers still working, not using those systems, still working off pen and paper, and in a lot of cases, still using Excel sheets for tracking lost property or anything really, complaints, etc. So, I think there's rather than technology overload, I think we could just got an abundance of legacy technology there that isn't fit for purpose, especially when compared to what we've access to now in our day-to-day lives.
It's interesting because I guess, especially at the moment, just as a layman, trying to get to grips with all the new AI tools in our day to day, never mind within in the hospitality space. I guess potentially there's a nervousness that if someone implements a new system, it's going to become out of date. So how do you sort of discuss that with somebody who thinks, well, is there a way of future proofing it?
Yeah, I suppose a huge part of systems in hotels is you shouldn't look at one individual system for one piece. It needs to be a holistic view of your entire technology stack. And I think if you're looking at bringing in a system, it needs to complement the ones that you have there already. You may decide you want to bring in a certain tool that fixes an immediate problem, but does that integrate into your PMS system or your workforce management system, for example, or whatever it needs to integrate into? And is it, I suppose, obviously, is it a cloud-first system, which is from a future-proofing perspective, is what we really want to be looking at is cloud solutions. I think on-property solutions are dead and gone a long time ago, and they are still out there. And so you just need to be mindful that you are selecting the right solutions that A, fit into your entire technology stack, and then B, that in the future are going to be able to integrate with solutions you're going to bring in elsewhere.
Sure. I was looking on LinkedIn, as I do occasionally, and I saw your founder Owen's top tips. Maitre have published 5 top tips, and one of them was interesting, and it sort of speaks to what we're just talking about. And it says, if your team needs a manual to use your software, it's already too complicated. Intuitive UX, user experience, is everything. So how does that philosophy shape how Maitre approaches the problem of disparate and scattered systems?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose for ourselves, it's one of our key visions when we're building anything is that it has to be pick up and go. You don't get manuals for Instagram or Spotify, so it just happens naturally. You learn it and then you move through it quickly. And the reason we have it so at the forefront of our development is because we are a high human system. When our team members are not sitting in front of exotic computers working away and getting time to spend a bit of an hour learning something. They're on the floors. They're cleaning bedrooms. They're fixing issues, or they're way off on the floors. They're physical jobs. They're not tied to a desk or standing at a computer. So therefore, they have to have a tool that is just simple for them to use, is minimal touch, but gets the job done, and it is also connected to everything around them as well.
And if there's an operator listening that's reviewing their tech stack at the moment, I'm sure they're always reviewing it ongoing. Yeah. What should they be prioritizing? And then the secondary question, what do you think the red flags are when choosing a new system?
Yeah, I suppose there's a couple of things there. And I kind of referred to a little bit earlier on. It needs to fit your operation. It needs to be the right fit for you and your team. So you need to be looking at how your team are going to adopt this new technology. And so doing a proper deep dive into any technology you're bringing on board, doing demos after demos, ideally if you can set up a pilot as well to really get to know the system. And then making sure, which again touched on previously, that it is future proof, that it is easily integrated into other solutions, because really that's where kind of hotels, especially from an operations perspective, they live is on good communication and good sharing of information, because you're running around, you're moving around your property, regardless of what role you're in, you want to be able to have the information at your fingertips, and it has to be accurate information as well.
Sure. Moving on to data. The data sets everywhere, right? We never had so much access to data. Which again sometimes can cause decision paralysis, because it's like, where do you start with it? I think previously you talked about the lack of clear data on a property, a hotel. Where are the biggest gaps and blind spots today, do you think, in relation to lack of data and reactive decision making?
Yeah, certainly from an operational perspective, we do an awful lot of everything is on a anecdotal basis, I suppose. So you might know who your kind of top performers are if you're a housekeeping manager, for example. Well, you don't actually know how good they are, if that makes sense. You don't know how long they're spending in bedrooms or what rating they're getting from their supervisors. And you can also, you can't be 100% sure in a role like that, where you have your team is spread across floors of a building, sometimes multiple buildings. It's hard to keep an eye on your team and how they're performing. So having a system that tracks all of that information it enables you then to reward your high performers, and then honestly identify those that need a little bit of training. And again, for the likes of maybe a restaurant or food and beverage outlet manager, they're in the same room almost most of the time. Hopefully they're not doing too much office work, but most of the time on the floor during service. And they're able to see and quite often hear interactions with guests. They can see how the performance has gone. So they're a little bit more in tune to what's going on. But when you've got an engineering team, again, running around in basements and sub-basements of properties all over the property, and you're relying on a pen and paper or a walkie-talkie way of communication, it's hard to really have data for performance management sides of things. Equally then, from I suppose an ownership and a management perspective, having these large data sets that allow you to make key decisions. We have a client, for example, that is looking to add additional inventory, additional rooms to their property, and they're using our system to identify what rooms are taking the longest. So really hone in on their COO. So when they go out to their investors, they're able to say, this is what our cost space is. This is what it's going to cost us. Then through other systems, they're going to say, this is what we're going to be able to sell these rooms for. And they're able to then reaccurately hone in what the value of these new bedrooms are going to be to the business. And so there's lots of different layers that the data can help with. And again, the data is really only as good as the user, so it has to be an intuitive system to use. You want them to use the system so that you get the proper data back in hand.
Thank you. You make an interesting point. You know, in a hotel, it's quite a unique situation. You've got the F&B manager, you've got the front of house, and they're there interacting with customers all the time. You say they're not necessarily just sitting behind a desk. So you're saying there is room in that decision-making process to overlay anecdotal feedback. Obviously not relying on it 100% to measure performance, but do you still think there is room for that?
I mean, there has to be. I know you can't. No, there'll be rollouts. We are the rollouts. There has to be an anecdotal feedback that you'll have the data there as well, but then you'll also have the ability to be on the forehand, especially for a restaurant manager, and you've got ways there where you're looking at how they're communicating with people and how they're making people feel, and I think that's really of the last kind of 5 to 10 years is the huge shift in hotels about how you make people feel as opposed to just box ticking a list of markers you need to hit from a waiter's perspective. I mean, you could have a bad meal at a restaurant, and if you have a fantastic waiter, that can quite often offset the poor experience. Yeah. You can have amazing food, and you can put a waiter or a waitress that ruins it up. So really, that emotional intelligence piece is huge. It will always be there, especially with the introduction of AI and the increased automation in hotels. That ability to really make someone's day or do something a little bit different, and will set you apart. So, yeah, I think there's no system that's how to replace the man management of people. It's just going to enable people to really, I suppose, focus in on what they're doing and help with that kind of performance management piece as well. You have incremental data that you can rely on over a period of time, so you can see trends on improvement or, in some cases, unfortunately, on the wrong way.
So you mentioned there about AI. Where does it fit into the picture? Do you think it's helping operators look ahead rather than look back? What's the view? Because it's front and center in everyone's lives, and again, it's like, where do you start with it? What's your experience?
It's topical at the moment as well. A lot of chat about the AI bubble, etc. And yeah, I think it's here, and it's here to say it's a game changer in many different ways. How we utilize it will be interesting. We often take leads from hoteliers and hotel industry, take leads from other industries. You'll see it with the airlines. Self-check-in went in a long time ago. You've seen it in hotels forever. From the AI perspective, there's the obvious piece that really I think has been the trend for the last 12 to 18 months is that kind of guest communication tool. So you see plugged into WhatsApp and guest messenger. That's really brought out kind of becoming quite a norm in hotels at the moment. And I think people are beginning to accept it and expect it. And if they want to just know what time checkout is, or if they just, for example, want to tell in their room, they can plug it into a system. They nearly expect to get an AI response. And quite often those AI responses are an awful lot faster than the human responses as well. So picking up those little questions that they don't have to then pick up the phone, ring the front desk. I suppose from our perspective, if they do ask for that tell, we integrate into those AI systems, and it'll push the request directly into our system, and we will push it directly to the person that looks after that. But then anyone else who wants to get involved, we'll notify those that need to know about it. But the traditional up-and-down communication method in hotels, it's changing. We referenced data earlier on as well, and we covered a little bit on that. I think there's a huge amount of the obvious benefits from an AI perspective in analyzing data, then moving towards predictive modeling, which obviously is going to help the bottom line from a rostering perspective. We were already doing it. You're able to, if you know that someday you're not getting into your bedrooms until 11 o'clock, or or if you know you're seeing there's a routine problem occurring in the same problem in a room, engineering are going to be able to identify that, okay, this is happening too frequently. And you're not have to be monitoring. The system's just going to tell you that this is happening. You may have a problem here. You might want to look at. So yeah, there's some fantastic AI companies out there as well, and especially in the startup space. Hotel AI, for example, an Irish company, which is obviously dear to me, they do some fantastic stuff around data management across systems for general managers. So yeah, some really interesting products coming out from the AI space, and it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds over the next number of months, or years, I suppose, from a hotel perspective. Because, like I said, we're traditionally a little bit slower than other industries to adopt.
Sure. And Donna, the conversations you've been having with operators, it could, again, for the average layman listening to this, and we're talking about systems integration and data, must just be for the big guys, right? But I guess that's not the case. These tools now exist, and what you do, I guess you work with operators, independents, or with all different shapes and sizes. Would that be correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We hostels and 5-star luxury resorts. So from our perspective, we're a dedicated operations system, and we're not specific for any one industry. But yeah, I think what we're seeing on the ground in terms of hotels, is that it more for the technology for hotels is that integrations are so much easier these days. You're not having to go on property and plug into a server to get an integration done, and they're not failing anymore. We've lots of open API connections available, and that's really where we see ourselves fitting in is a glue for all that information flow. And so what it allows for the PMS systems that we integrate into across to the workforce management systems, the guest request systems, and then BI tools. We sit in the middle and collect all that information and make sure that it's going from A to B, and then most importantly, it is going down to the team members that need to have it in front of them. So if someone says something, we talk about guest experience, or if someone says that they want. If someone says they're in a food and beverage area, that they like speaking with the curtains open, you quickly plug it into our system. We'll update the profile out in the PMS system. Housekeeping will then see it in the room. They're able to leave the curtains up. And those little touches are an amazing way of personalizing guest stays without actually having to have a bunch of people running up to them trying to personalize stays. It's those little touches that add up and make a huge difference. Traditionally, they would have been reserved for luxury hotels, but any hotel now can do something like that using different systems.
So, in many ways, it helps hotels of a certain size level up in that regards in terms of their, as you say, personalization and maybe what they couldn't do before because they needed more staff really to do that. But I want to talk about staff. Obviously, there are staff shortages across the industry, and sometimes that leads to skill gaps as well. What are you finding in terms of tech adoption? Do the skill gaps often slow that down? Do you see any sort of fear factor among teams who feel undertrained? Or should that not be an issue because the tech is now much more user friendly for the average?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's why it has to be user friendly. There's that fear of tech adoption, and I was an hotelier for a long time. We've all been bitten by poor technology and bad technology. I think the industry suffers from that a little bit, which is unfortunate. But there's so many solutions out there now that don't come with that problem, and so the tech adoption piece within hotels is important. It has to be the right fit for an operation, and it has to fit well, and it has to be quick and easy, especially in high turnover roles. From the staff shortage point of view, I think I don't mention the COVID word, but we were all bidding during COVID. We lost a huge amount of people to other industries, and when as an industry ourselves, we were on our knees. And that was tough for all operators. And I think if we can provide, it's definitely starting to come back. And as a result, we're seeing kind of the skills get a little bit better, and it's slowly, but it's not overnight. And I think what it did allow for is an opportunity for some great young talent to take on maybe the roles that previously wouldn't have been available to them, they're now coming out the other side of kind of 3, 4, 5 years of that experience and turning into really strong leaders. So the future is bright from that perspective. But yeah, I think it's I think from an employee experience perspective, you want to give your employees the right tools to do their job and to make it easier for them and to make them feel more connected with their information and make it seamless. So that is really important from a tech side of things. But also from in general, from any processes they have in a hotel, you want to make it, from a staff retention point of view, you want to make it a lot better and easier from a day-to-day perspective.
Sure. And I guess tech can genuinely ease staffing pressures as well, without, I guess, stripping away the human element that hospitality, relies on.
Yeah, exactly. But it depends what you want to use the technologies. But I mentioned earlier on about the kind of streamlining of communication and the streamlining of information from the guest perspective. That also goes for in between within teams. So there's less interruptions to people's days for requests when most of the people don't actually get involved in a request, or information goes into WhatsApp groups or chat groups, and everyone stops what they're doing. So from a time perspective on the ground, it frees up kind of middle management time to focus on guest experience, to focus on employee experience, to focus on training standards, whatever it may be as well. But also allows them then, when they are a little bit squeezed from a headcount perspective, they might be going through a low spell with their team, that they can then lean on the system to get through the day with less people on property.
And looking ahead, what excites you, Conor, most about hospitality tech over the next 1, 3, 5 years?
Yeah, we'd be just in the AI piece. It's going to be really interesting to see how that does, beyond just the data management and the data analysis side of things, how that really unfolds over the next number of years. There's some fantastic startups, as I mentioned earlier on, and it's getting easier and easier by using AI for startups to get up and off the ground. And that's where the real ideas are. I mean, it's some like ourselves or other people who've lived the pain and are trying to fix it. And that's where the great ideas come from, is from those kind of early tech adopter or early tech startups, if that makes sense. So it's an exciting time from that perspective. As mentioned, AI really helps from an engineering point of view as well, in terms of getting stuff off the ground and getting things moving.
Sure. And we're going to see you at No Vacancy London in February in Excel within the startup zone. What brought you to the event? What do you hope to get out of it? Why are you looking forward to attending?
Yeah, really excited for No Vacancy next year. Obviously, the Australian version of the event is legendary as well, and delighted to be involved in the first event in London. To be honest, I really love just the way you champion startups and you have your startups on. It's a really fantastic initiative, which gives startups like ourselves the opportunity to access these events and to present what we're doing. And we're excited to see what a lot of other people are doing. I know a few that are going already, and there's definitely a few that I haven't met as well. So excited to get in and see what the rest of the tech startups are up to.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you there, and obviously anyone that's listening, they can come see you in the startup zone, and I guess also follow you on LinkedIn and obviously visit the website. Conor, thank you so much for your time today. We wish you well on your journey from hotel manager to tech entrepreneur.
No, so far enjoyable. A very different experience and very enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm sure. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.